Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten seen a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
Hey, y'all. It's been a pretty eventful 48 hours. I hopped on here right when we found out that Stetson Bennett would be a Heisman finalist, Jake. And ever since then, you know, I knew that people might have a problem with that. I didn't know that it would get this hairy in the Twitter replies, man.
You know, I just don't understand it, right? Like, I mean, it's that whole I mean, I think Stetson's probably right there with about 6 other guys or 4 or 5 other guys at least that deserve to be there. And he just kind of happened to get the votes. There's a lot of Hendon Hooker talk. Well, listen, man, when your last 4 games, when the last third of your season includes loss, win, loss, did not play, you're probably not going to be high in the running for the Heisman. You're just
fairly or not, right?
I mean, yeah, unfairly or not. That's just, I mean, God, we're all human, right? I mean, we're all human, and, you know, we're all recency bias and things like that. There's only so much you can do to not, you know, be there. And there's only so much you know, football is a cumulative effect game. You're not the same team in September that you will be in October and November. And if you're lucky enough to play in December, or maybe unlucky enough to play in December, if you only get to play 1 game in December, Georgia's going to get to play 2. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, Stetson had a really good season. He should have thrown for more touchdown passes, but he was at his best. He scored 17 against the 5 ranked teams that Georgia played, accounted for 17. If you do that, obviously across the whole season, you know, you're looking at 51 touchdowns. If you do it across the 13-game season, what Stetson Bennett did against the top 5 teams that he played, he would have 44 touchdowns right now. So he's a fantastic player, and he's done a lot of really things for Georgia this year. And I think Georgia's held him back. I mean, you know, you look at the Kentucky game, you look at the Georgia Tech game, those games where, you know, to borrow a Russell Wilson deal, they didn't let Stet cook. And
no, they did not.
They did not let Stet cook
they
at
kept
all.
Stet out of the kitchen.
Yeah, they kept Stet was like a 1955 ad salesman that you know came home from work at 5:00. He stayed out of the kitchen. He only went through to
where's my supper?
Pick at what the beautiful wife was cooking for him, and thank goodness she stopped cooking for him one day.
Yeah, I mean they ran the clock out on the season, and they just kind of put him in a shell. Everyone was panicking during that time, and we kind of tried to temper people's expectations a little bit, and you saw the fruits of that discipline. Look at what he did against LSU.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you know, that to me has been like the biggest thing about having a 25-year-old quarterback is the on-off switch. Is, you know, Stetson's mature enough, I feel like, to make that happen. I think Stetson may also just kind of be Stetson enough to make that happen, because I don't think people understand. You see him on the, you know, TV and stuff. It's kind of hard to explain. Stetson's that guy that, you know, if you're a guy, you know what I'm talking about. He's one of those guys you grew up with, and you didn't really know he could play ping pong, but he's better at ping pong than pretty much every other guy in the group.
Oh, and he's not even like it's not like he's a sandbagger either.
Right.
He's not like just over there trying to embarrass you or punk you out. He just kind of has a quiet confidence about him.
Yeah. And you take him golfing, right? You take him golfing like you didn't even know he golfed, or maybe, you know, he hasn't golfed in 2 years. You take him golfing, he starts out kind of slow, and then next thing you know, you're fighting for your life on the back nine to keep a guy who hasn't played in a year.
I played in David Pollock's charity deal this summer, and they had on one of the holes was like the long drive, right? And sure enough, we rode past it. I didn't hit it. And the stake was in the ground, and there's a little sheet, little clipboard. The first name on there was Jake Fromm, and the name above it that had just outdriven Jake Fromm was Stetson Bennett, and he
Wow.
just wrote Stetson and put a smiley face by it. I mean, he's just he's got these stories, man. That's just what he is. He's a walking story.
He is, and I bet he's good at tennis. I bet he's good at basketball. And I'm not saying he's the best at any of those things, but that's just kind of how he is. And we found out, and I think a lot of fans, if there was crow to eat, crow would be an endangered species right now. Because a lot of the Georgia fan base has to eat crow on the fact they just didn't think he could get any better. They thought he was a senior or a fifth-year senior, talking about 2020, 2021, and that Georgia, you knew what Georgia was with Stetson Bennett. And by the way, you knew what Georgia was at the end of 2021 with Stetson Bennett, national champions, but you just knew what he was. And then here you are, 3,400-yard passer, with, like Wes said, running the clock out in the last 2 games of the season, basically not letting him throw it very much, throwing it half as much as he was throwing it. Could have put up 3,800 yards, I feel like, at least 3,750, something of that along those lines. At least give him a chance to throw for 4,000 in these last 2 playoff games. It's going to be a little tougher to do at 3,400, but very possible.
I mean, he was making throws, Jake, and we were sitting by each other in the press box, you, me, and Palmer, and there was a throw where he was just getting crumpled. There were tigers on his back, and he was just slinging it, sidearming it. There are like back-to-back throws on one of those drives where
he slipped on one of them and still got it in there. And then he had a guy in his face and kind of threw it off his back foot and got it in there to Dominic Blaylock. And then he threw another one behind Dominic Blaylock while getting hit right in the mouth. He was making some plays in that game. And there are Heisman moments for Stetson. He's not going to win it. I think it's going to be Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams thrown for 4,000 yards and is accounted for 47 touchdowns or something like that this year. It's pretty crazy. But there were some times in that game. You look back at the 60-something yard run he had against Auburn, the one that's probably right there on our screen right there.
Well, this is last year, but I just picked it.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It kind of looks like the Heisman pose a little bit. There's a better angle that we didn't have rights to, but yeah, I mean, there are things. It's all these Twitter warriors, and so many of them are Tennessee fans. And I understand the pain that they're going through right now. And I think you and I are on the same page about this. I don't think it has to be Stetson versus Hendon Hooker. I don't think it necessarily has to be Stetson took Hendon Hooker's spot. And I think it's easy to say that because he's in the SEC. Tennessee fans know him. He's more familiar. They're probably not as well-versed in what Caleb Williams did this year or Duggan or Stroud. So I understand why all that's happening, but I'm surprised too at some of the media members who presumably have votes are so upset about it. And I'm not going to sling mud in here. Y'all know who I'm talking about, but there's just some weird vibes around this whole thing that in a weird way is kind of a microcosm of Stetson's whole career.
Yeah.
Okay, step right up and doubt this guy again. And I don't necessarily expect it, I guess. But I will say, Jake, nothing's going to surprise me about him anymore. If he does win it, like it's going to be, all right, sure. I get it because he's done so many other things.
Yeah, here's the thing. I've taken some time to kind of go through Ohio State last few days. I'm not trying to give Ohio State any bulletin board material, but you want to talk about the guy who probably should have been left out. It's probably CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
I think CJ Stroud probably
he had the touchdown numbers.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is the competition. And I know a lot of Georgia fans are circling that when you do compare Stetson against some of the other guys, the AP top 25 competition and how Stetson did against those teams. He was flawless, not flawless, but he was unblemished on the win-loss sheet. I'm going to welcome in Palmer Toms really quick. He's on a little bit of a crunch at the moment. Palmer is at McCamish Pavilion.
He's at the club.
For clean old-fashioned hate on the hardwood. I think is what Palmer called it.
Yeah, we got a 69-68 ball game with 6:53 left. There's been 14 lead changes in the second half. So,
are you at the Georgia Aquarium right now, Palmer? Are you with the belugas?
I wish. That'd be so much.
The audio sounds like you're underwater. What's going on at McCamish?
A tight ball game, 69-68 with 6:53 to go. 14 lead changes in the second half. I have a feeling this one's going to be decided late.
How about Mike White's Dogs? What's the story of this team so far, Palmer?
Yeah, they've got 7 wins under their belt so far. Topping last season's total. They're 9 games into this, and feel like they've got a good feel for their identity. They want to do things on the defensive side of the floor, and at times struggle to score, but certainly hasn't been the case tonight. Putting up over 70 points with 6:30 to go.
All right. Well, Palmer, I'll let you get back to that. I did want to invite you in, though, and just let people know that DawgsHQ is in Atlanta once again, watching some hoops this time. And Palmer will have all the coverage, of course, over at DawgsHQ.com. And I assume we'll hear from Mike White and a couple dogs right here on our YouTube channel as well. Appreciate it, man. Safe travels. Get you a chili dog from the varsity on the way back, huh? All right. Thanks, Palmer. I'm impressed with Mike White's Dogs. I don't know how many Georgia fans are devoting all their attention to the team right now with football still going on, but you got to like what you've seen from some of those early returns.
I gotta say, it's been a transformation. Obviously, the roster turned over pretty quickly, but it's been a defensive transformation for this team. And if you're a Georgia basketball fan and you've kind of gone through Mark Fox and then you've gone through Tom Crean, and obviously you've learned a lesson, and that's that defense does matter. Tom Crean was basically no defense, play some exciting brand of offense, turn it over a lot, maybe force some turnovers and do that thing. Mark Fox was basically defense. And we've learned that the defense was definitely more successful. That whether it was because of that
wasn't
or not,
as fun, but
it won more games.
That's right.
And it challenged and competed more, which makes sense. You were in more ball games. But the other way, the Tom Crean way, as unsuccessful as it was, did give people a chance to scratch that itch. Because I remember it, man. I remember it well. The message boards, God, get somebody else in here. At least it'll be an exciting brand of basketball to watch.
Right.
It didn't pan out well for you. Losing ain't fun.
I worked with a guy that was a Hoosier, and he was like, "Man, y'all are not gonna enjoy this." And I was like, "Okay, I mean, I'll at least wait." And he's like, "Nah, it's gonna suck." I was like, "Okay," he was right. All right, back to Stet for a minute. One thing that I was kind of a shower thought I had today, Jake. The thing that no one's saying about Stetson right now, whether or not they believe in his ability to win the Heisman or whether or not he even deserves to be there, no one's calling him a game manager anymore. Nope. And I think that says a lot subconsciously about people at least recognizing that the guy's floor is higher this year than it was last year.
Yeah, and like I said, he got better. And I honestly, like if you look back, I mean, what could Georgia have been if it didn't go? And listen, I thought it was the right move at the time too. I praised Kirby Smart as a genius for getting both of these guys. But if he doesn't go get Jamie Newman, if he doesn't go get JT Daniels, and they just committed to Stetson, and they said, you know what, we're going to give you a chance to win this job. You're going to get number 1 reps. I know it was a COVID year, so it was really weird. But instead of him just not being a part of the plan, maybe they build the plan around him. And that goes to show they're not always right. Even though they have all the information, they're not always right. But if they had done that, where would we be now, with Stetson? Where would we, maybe he would be the front runner for this thing right now. Maybe he might be going for 2 in a row. He might be like Baker Mayfield or something, invited 2 years in a row. I don't know. It's really weird to think about because it sure did matter that one off season that he was the guy and he got the number 1 reps because he rolled up into Athens. He rolled up into Atlanta, actually, in the place where he's going to play next, and had a big game and didn't really stop there. Every single time they put the ball in his hands and said, hey, go do your thing. He responded really well. And in the games where they didn't get him into a rhythm, they struggled. Yeah,
he loves playing there. That's for sure. And we'd be remiss if we didn't point out that, like Baker Mayfield, Stetson won the Burlsworth Trophy last night. And what an award for him to take home. personifies so much. If you don't know the backstory of that award and all the charitable work that they do, it's amazing. It's great stuff. Basically, the most outstanding player that started his career as a walk-on. And Stetson had a great speech, had a funny moment last night where he said he wishes that his whole team could be on the stage to accept it with him, but they took the easy way out, and most of them got scholarships, unlike him. So always quick-witted. Stetson takes a little bit of time sometimes to get his jokes out, but you always know he's got something cooking in there, and he's trying to cook for another national championship right now. And this Buckeyes defense, I don't know how much work they can do between now and New Year's Eve to hem this Georgia offense in. And there's a lot to discuss there and a lot of developments to be had, I'm sure.
I've got some documents right here, Wes. I've got the documents right here.
All right. Well,
Alex, what's his name? What's that guy's name?
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. Yeah, Alex Jones, InfoWars. I got it right here. All right. I've probably got more money than that guy right now, too.
Yeah.
So listen, I've been doing some stat crunching, Wes, and listen. So Ohio State, I say listen a lot, and I need to stop. There are a lot of folks out there talking about the improvement of this Ohio State defense, right? And we're going to get into these numbers crazy, later on. Pass defense ranked number 45 in the country in terms of yards per attempt. Not great, but not bad, right? Kind of got lit up by Michigan, probably caused them to slide down a little bit. Run defense, number 23 in the country, yards per attempt. I looked, and it's kind of uncanny. I wanted to see who they played. How good were the teams that they played? Well, in terms of run defense, yards per carry, the average opponent for Ohio State was ranked just over 80th in the country. 80.
That's the average.
The average, just over 88, like 80.3. Ohio State has played 4 teams with a run defense 115 in the nation or worse. Okay. And also, played with a run game. Sorry. That is 115 in the nation or worse. I think it was something like 7 teams outside the top 75, 9 teams outside of the top 50, and only 1 team ranked inside the top 40. And that was Michigan. And that's the run game. So Ohio State has played some of the nation's worst run defenses this year. On average, the nation's 80th ranked run defense. It is exactly the same on offense, Wes. Believe it or not, it's crazy. 80th. I think
it's like the exact same stats.
Yeah, it's like 80.4 and 80.3. So the average passing game, in terms of yards per attempt that Ohio State has played this year, the opponent ranks 80.4.
So this, to me, kind of seems like, I don't know how similar Michigan's are, but I would venture to guess they're somewhere in the same ballpark since there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, it probably depends on the out-of-conference schedule, because those can kind of actually skew this, right? When you talk about let's say you got a Hawaii versus a Toledo, and one of those offenses may, completely just,
UConn
rip it up in their conference.
Yeah.
As opposed to, whatever. Those schools didn't tend to do that. I haven't looked at Michigan's, but it's something that would be worth looking at, especially when you talk about they're not number 5 in the country in yards per play, or number 2 or something like that. But man, I really think, and I'm not saying that they're not going to be good defensively, because you look and there are some dudes that I remember seeing a lot of stars beside their name when they were coming out of high school, and they're playing a lot of ball. But
a lot of All-Americans on
this
roster.
Whole improvement that Jim Knowles has brought to Ohio State, I think it's just a little bit fool's gold, just a little bit, because they haven't really faced any competition. It's been kind of tough, to really get a good read on exactly how good they are. And Georgia, as we know, Georgia's offense is very balanced. It can run inside, it can run outside. That's one thing I will say that I think makes Georgia more dangerous than a lot of people realize is, Georgia will run a double move and stretch the field on you. They'll attack you in the intermediate. They'll dink and dunk behind the line of scrimmage, screen game, run game, inside, outside, quarterback run game.
Well, Jake,
they've got all of those punches.
Back to the Heisman deal, okay? Stetson doesn't have the stats everyone else has, okay? But his top 3 receivers this year come from 3 different position groups.
Yep.
Tight end, Brock, Kenny Mack, and Ladd McConkey. How many offenses have 3 top leading receivers that are from 3 different position groups. And you can either use that as proof that Stetson doesn't deserve to be a candidate. I am obviously biased, but I could almost say, man, you look at what Todd Monken asks that guy to do on the field.
Yeah.
And maybe he doesn't have the stats, but he's the maestro. He's in command of it. And he's the only guy that will be on that stage that has a conference championship and hasn't lost a game. So there are these little things in there that maybe he doesn't have the stats on the stat sheet, but it's these qualities that he has. It's these intangible traits that make him a pretty solid candidate to me anyway.
I'll tell you another thing that really kind of, we talked about Georgia not letting him cook, not letting him get into the kitchen. Has he ever made a deal about it? Has he ever had bad body language about it? Has he ever, gotten into a, argument or
no.
things getting heated?
About throwing a Microsoft Surface on the sideline or whatever.
Right?
Tom
Yeah.
Brady is.
He just drinks too much water and vomits every now and then. That's basically all he does. You know, so it's about as fussy as old Stetson's going to get. Is to drink a little bit too much and do that. But
I derailed you, but yes, Georgia's
offense. No. I that's just what I was kind of getting at as we were kind of transitioning to. Maybe I thought we maybe transition to a different topic was, getting into Ohio State a little bit. I've just kind of dug through the numbers a little bit. You really kind of come to know how bad the Big Ten was this year. That's
what I was getting at when I said I imagine Michigan's in the same ballpark. And it also kind of shows you the game may have revealed who was the true threat out of those 2 teams and out of that conference. I'm not saying Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in the playoff. I mean, they found their own way in, and I expect they'll give Georgia a game. Specifically, that offense is scary, man. Especially with some of the struggles Georgia had in the SEC championship. I don't know how serious they are, but they've had their struggles. Look, Jake, I went back and watched the SEC network, I believe, the ESPN app, whatever it is. They had their Georgia 60, which is like Georgia's whole season in an hour. And it was fun to go back and watch because you see some things that have been there all along that maybe you don't recognize, you don't notice. One of them was Darnell Washington at least once every game has a little Darnell play that they've kind of set aside for him on the shelf, and he makes it pretty much every time. He had some trouble with Stetson here and there getting their connection going, but Darnell's presence is there. But there were games where Georgia gave up some explosive plays in the passing game. The Florida game comes to mind. Mizzou caught him flat-footed a couple times. So they're out there. There are plays to be had on this Georgia defense.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as good as last year's defense, and I don't think anybody would really want to fight you for that. It's definitely not as good as last year's defense without Nolan Smith. I was interested when I looked back at the transcript from the LSU game, those 500 passing yards. Kirby Smart said that they played them different in the second half. He said that. He said we played them. We did some different things, or we played different defense in the second half, and it bit us. So I don't know if they maybe put those guys in some tough situations like that or not. If that kind of resulted in some of the struggles there. But this is a team that's better offensively, and I don't know, man. The thing about this Georgia team is just it's that phone booth fight, and you don't see it. You don't realize it, but if they lure you into that fight, you don't realize how many different ways they hurt you. They've got like a little thumb to the rib cage and like the 3 fingers to the little 3 fingers to the armpit, or like a pinky up the nose and then a punch to the jaw. I mean, it's got so many different scrappy ways.
You're in the corner getting
they hurt you and
up.
They
you
injure
don't realize.
You. And you're just getting, and all the while they're pressing you up against the wall and just kind of pressing the air out of you. And then the next thing you know, you're defeated. And if Georgia and Michigan are alike in this way, I think Michigan is kind of Georgia light in a lot of ways because I think they're kind of put together the same. I think Georgia throws the ball a little bit better than Michigan does. Probably got better skill guys on the outside and at tight end. But they're both similar in that if they lure you into that phone booth, if they get you into their fight, you're not going to win it.
No.
I mean, the only way you're going to win it is if you're built like they are and you're better. And that's where I think Georgia has such an advantage and why it's so important that they take care of the football and do the little things right.
Have you seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Brad?
Yes, a million times.
So the scene where he fights Bruce Lee, where Brad Pitt fights Bruce Lee, I've listened to an interview where Quentin Tarantino talks about it. And he says the whole deal with Brad Pitt's stuntman character is he does these little fights on the set. Of course, there's this whole crazy backstory that we don't know that Tarantino has in his coked out mind. And basically his whole deal is he lets you reveal what your move is going to be. That's what he did with Bruce Lee. He gets him on the ground, right? Second attempt he has, because the whole bet was who can get the other guy on the ground twice first. So he lets Bruce Lee have one. Second one, he throws him right into that vintage car. And I almost feel like that's what Georgia does to an extent. They're not going to play with fire, and Michigan does something similar because they did it against Ohio State. Ohio State got out to an early lead, and after that, what happened? I mean, they kind of play with fire, but they let you show what you're going to do a little bit. They feel you out, and then it's game over.
Yeah, and the way that they fight you builds that muscle between the ears, and it's almost like an alternator for a car. You drive the car, and it charges that battery. When you fight and when you do the physical, grueling fight that these teams, it's not exciting sometimes with the body blows. When you get yourself into those dog fights and those fist fights like that, it's like the truck running, and all the while your brain's the battery and it's just charging the whole time. And that whole mental toughness thing is building, and you're not even sure that's actually coming through all the pain and the endurance. Like that's just where it comes from. And that's where Georgia is right now. Michigan's getting there, man. I mean, I think Jim Harbaugh, you don't see coaches turn it around like that. He was gone. He took a payout or took a lesser money to stay and then turn the thing around. That just doesn't happen very often. Kudos to him. I think they can beat Georgia. Missouri could have beat Georgia.
Yeah.
All right. Missouri could have beat Georgia, which, by the way, Wes, you want to get back to Stetson real quick, talk about the Missouri game. Got a little stat for folks. I threw it on Twitter today.
Yep.
Stetson has thrown 35 fourth quarter passes this year. 9 of them, so over a quarter of them, were against Missouri. 7 of 9, 78 yards in the fourth quarter, while trailing against Missouri. Completed the last 7 passes, his last 7 pass attempts for that game for those 78 yards. And Georgia scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and won that game. So just another little Heisman stat there for Stetson.
That's another one.
Sprinkling these throughout.
Yeah, Stetson stats.
Yeah,
that's another one on that Georgia 60 where they spend a lot of time on it because it was actually a ball game. And you see a couple things take shape throughout that game. It's the tight ends. They dialed it up. They needed them. And it's Kenny McIntosh. And I know that Kenny Mack was dealing with some stuff throughout the year as recently as last week. I mean, he was bruised up and banged up. But that game, man, he flipped a switch. All right, let's flip a switch ourselves. We'll get to some transfer portal news in a moment because I know everyone wants to know about that. But
it'd be awesome, Wes, if we had if we had one of those like portal looking things, like animated behind us while we talk about the portal. That'd be great.
I'll get to work on that. Let me see if I can get that going here in a second. But
I'm an ideas guy. I'm definitely not in the execution department.
We're producing on the fly. And
by the way, Georgia game may be over by now, but from what I'm seeing, I'm streaming this thing. There's 23 and a half seconds left, and Georgia is losing 78-77.
I'm just looking for portals. Anyway, if you're looking for T-shirts, go to breakingtea.com or just follow the exact link in our bio. That's probably the best thing to do in the episode description. It's in the YouTube. It's in the podcast, Apple and Spotify. We got it all over the place. And Breaking Tea has some really solid top to bottom work of their own that they have going. Bennett and Bowers. By the way, We need to dig in more on this Bowers drug test story. I just kind of dropped it in your lap before we popped in here. We're going to get some more specifics on that. Christopher Smith with the Savage pads and, of course, the Big O. Some really solid stuff. Still got the national championship merch, but maybe they'll be replacing some of that here in a few weeks. Breaking Tea, top-notch stuff as always. All right, Jake, speaking of the portal, Dogs are offering guys want to come visit. Georgia may have some guys that are testing the waters themselves. What are some of the high-level, big-picture storylines that you've kind of kept your ear close to the ground on as it relates to Georgia in the portal?
Well, it's no secret now. Wide receiver is the topic du jour. And Georgia has reportedly two reported offers. Two guys that have actually made it known that they have gotten offered. Two guys. It's Ra Thomas from Mississippi State. Georgia's played both of these guys this year. Ra Thomas from Mississippi State, breakout sophomore season from him, over 600 yards receiving. Kid from Montgomery, Alabama, so it'd be a chance to get a little bit closer to home for him. Obviously, Auburn's very close there, and they're going to recruit him pretty hard. Ole Miss has recruited him very hard. I think Georgia's in pretty good shape here early on. Now, does that mean somebody's going to swoop in with an NIL deal or some promises of passes falling into his hands like snowflakes in a snowstorm? I don't know. They may be able to sell him on pie in the sky stuff. And, Georgia's probably trying to sell him on the same thing. It's not like Georgia's loaded with 1,000-yard receivers and first-round NFL draft picks at receiver either, but they can get there just like they did on the defensive line. But I think Georgia's going to have a good shot here. I think that competition and having a chance to win and maybe do some things is high on this kid's list. They have also offered another guy they played this year from Kent State, Dante Cephas, Cephas, stud. Guy has 2,000 yards over the last two seasons, basically, receiving. He had missed 3 games this year, so he did that over the last 2 seasons while missing 3 games. His head coach, Sean Lewis, is headed to Colorado to be Deion's offensive coordinator. I'm sorry, because Sean Lewis is one of those Josh Heupel dudes. Wes, I think you might be muted.
Oh, my bad. I have my mic turned down.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people had that Kent State Georgia game in their notes when they saw what Kent State was able to do in Athens and be a little annoying against Kirby Smart's team. And obviously it paid off in a new gig for that guy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he was making at
They
Kent
were good
State.
in their own right. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to take away from them.
Yeah, but he had been at Kent State for a while. Like for a few years now, several years. And he's a Josh Heupel, Art Browse, Kendall Browse offense style, that wide split outside the thing, hit the run game, all that jazz. I was wondering, Wes, to be honest with you, I don't know if you remember the Kent State game where they threw a ball out to the flat and Kamari Lassiter peeked inside and Chris Smith was going inside and the kid got a little crease outside and it looked like he was shot out of a cannon. One of the fastest kids I've seen play Georgia this year. I was wondering when they made that offer if it was going to be to that kid. It was not. Dante Cephas had 3 catches for 25 yards against
Not
Georgia.
Quintez.
Yeah, not Quintez Cephas. That's the kid from Georgia that went to Wisconsin and got exonerated and, probably write a movie about that kid one day.
Yeah, that was wild.
But, yeah, that was a wild situation. But, yeah, so those are the 2 that reported offers. I know Georgia has also offered Dominic Lovett at Missouri, so make that 3 guys they've offered that they have played. I'm told that Dorian, I have lost his last name.
Dorian.
The cat from Arizona.
I'm not sure what his name is either.
Oh, man. I had Dorian Singer is his name. 1,000-yard receiver from Arizona. Good chance he probably stays out in the Pac-12. I'm told that Georgia may have offered there as well. If they haven't, I don't give them a great chance to get him right now. Maybe they could get him on campus for a visit. Some of these guys, some of these veterans or some of these guys that have put up some numbers and they feel good about their draft stock, they may want to win. They may want to just have a chance to win, and Georgia's going to be really good again next year. I mean, they're going to be really, really good again next year as long as they get solid quarterback play because that defense is going to be incredible. And Georgia's going to be good. The transfer portal's there. I think you may also want to look at other positions I think if it was the right offensive tackle, they might want to go at a guy. If it's the right defensive end or edge or safety, they might also want to go after it. I think this is I expect a much more active portal season from Georgia this time around this year. And I think honestly that what happened, that Georgia not taking anybody out of the portal this past year may kind of set them up pretty well because you don't have to worry about the numbers issue that it would have caused last year, and then B, you've kind of set a precedent, and it's that we're going out to get you to help our team, but we'll be fine without you
because we don't need you.
Right. I think that's the message that Georgia kind of has. We want you. We may need you a little bit, but we can do without you.
Yeah, I want to highlight a pretty cool feature that we have at On3 now, just dropped today, I believe, is the transfer portal tracker. Now, the way this works is it's the teams that are actually using the portal a lot, okay? So it's kind of a ranking system, but it takes in consideration the players that have transferred in and out, their average rating, and then kind of gives them a score. All right. And of course, there's NIL pumped in there as well. But I want to make sure I'm looking at the right sport here because I saw UCLA and Illinois and Kansas. But I guess that makes sense. Those are schools that are either losing or getting a lot of guys out of the transfer portal. So Georgia not really popping up on this, but as Georgia begins to get a little bit more active, maybe you see the Dogs pop up on that a little bit more. Pretty cool tool that we are cooking up in the On3 labs. So check that out. Before we wrap up, Jake, Roos is on vacation, but you said you did have maybe a nugget or two on the recruiting front as we are now just over 2 weeks away from that early signing day. Hold on, you're muted.
Oh, man, I had a good line there, and I completely missed it because I was muted. I said, I don't know anything about recruiting after just explicitly telling you we could talk recruiting. No, I mean, I think, there's some really good momentum for Georgia down the stretch in this class. Damon Wilson, big-time need. Landon Samuel Mpemba was big. I think they get Damon Wilson. It is a home run at outside linebacker, and then all of a sudden you can start exploring options about Gabe Harris maybe playing defensive end, edge type role, or being that tweener, that Davin Bellamy, Jordan Jenkins style of player there. So that's one thing I would keep an eye on. I would also, I'm telling you, this Chase Basantis kid, and I think I'm saying his name right. It's basically Bison Tiss.
Okay.
Big time offensive lineman out of California. He is committed to Texas A&M. Georgia's working hard there. Interior offensive lineman reminds me of Ernest Green from last year's class. Big dude, has some tackle ability if they want to use him out there at tackle. Got a big commitment from the Merriweather kid yesterday too. I guess we didn't get a chance to bring that up. Flip the kid from Central Florida.
Our talent evaluator, Charles Power, loves that guy.
Yeah, from Brunswick, Charles Power. Listen, I'll say this about On3. There are a lot of guys out there that are good at evaluating, but there are two guys here, Charles Power and Jerry Hamilton, who are as scientific and as committed to understanding what traits it takes to be a great football player. There's nobody better. Barton Simmons now works at with Vanderbilt.
Andy.
He was right there with those same folks. But those two are great, and Charles Power speaks really high of Jamal Merriweather, who committed to Georgia yesterday. 4-star prospect with us, as you can see right there, because Charles and Jerry are high on him. But the On3 consensus has him.
I don't know how it works at all. Is it all just prognosticating their ceiling? Is it what they are now? What kind of goes into that
balance? It's really a balance. You have to kind of put together the full picture, right? Like you have to kind of, all right, traits. Well, you're not going to have a 5'11" offensive tackle. So you got to have, there are certain prerequisite, traits that you got to have. You got to be long enough. And there's some guys who break the mold, like an Isaiah Wynn or Jamar Sawyer, who play tackle and without really ideal tackle measurables. But you're looking at that kid, he's 6'6.5", incredible length. You can see it on film, high hips. He bends okay, not elite, which may probably put him in more of a right tackle, or maybe he develops some better flexibility in the strength program. Sometimes that happens, but it's not super common. And then, on top of all that, you've got a bunch of other different, things you want to see, lower body strength and frame. He weighs 260 something pounds, I believe, on his profile right there. They've got it at 285 now. Sorry, I had to lean in there and look at it.
Yeah.
You're going to want him at 310, probably 315. Can he get that heavy? Can he get that heavy without being, looking like me? You don't want him to look like me. If he's going to play tackles. So, you got to be able to carry that weight well, like an Amarius Mims. You want to be 325 pounds and look like you weigh 250. And that's what Amarius Mims does. So there's just a lot of that. And not only that, Wes, you get all of that together, you compile all that. And then you've also got to kind of look at his film and determine, where's he at right now? How far does he have to go to meet that ceiling? How likely is he? Then you have to talk to coaches and the people around him and find out, okay, is he going to work hard enough to get to that ceiling? And then all of it just kind of comes together. You're looking for productiveness. And that's one of the hardest positions to do it at in the history of the world. It's one of the hardest ones ever.
Mean Mug and Mutt says you want to carry it like Darnell. There aren't many people that carry it like Darnell, man. He's there are times when Darnell looks like Bambi on ice because he's just all legs when he goes up in the air. And I feel bad for anyone that guy lands on. That 2-point conversion he caught lands on that poor LSU DB, and it's just game over. I don't know if anyone's found him. I don't know if he even made it back home to Baton Rouge.
They probably stuffed him in that barrel.
He did stuff him in the field goal barrel. That's the new that's the new insult. It's not stuffing teams in a locker. It's Georgia wants to go out there and stuff them in the field goal net barrel, because that is the way that you really determine how dominant you are.
Wes, I've already determined, like right here, like right there on my, I'm going to make myself like a little nightstand deal sitting back here. I'm going to give me one of those blue meth barrels. Just like sit it back there.
Your wife is going to be so pissed.
Like a shelf. I'm just going to get one back there, put photos on it and stuff. Flowers.
Yeah. Y'all are decorating your new home, and she's just putting up with meth barrels in the house. Yeah. Wade Wolford here. We'll go out on a high note. Hot take. Heisman winner, Stetson Bennett. Caleb Williams finishes second. Stroud and Duggan bringing up the rear. A lot of people kind of ticked too. It wasn't just about Hooker. It was the Corum kid from Michigan getting left out too. I mean, you can never get the full list where everyone deserves. I mean, Georgia's been on the end of this too with Todd Gurley a few years ago. Chubb. I mean, tell me those guys didn't put the things on tape that you'd want to see from one of the best 4 players in the country. It just doesn't always shake out the way it should.
Nick Chubb played half a season and had more rushing yards than Blake Corum did. So
freak.
I mean, he was, I mean, Nick Chubb in as a freshman rushed for over 1,500 yards, and he did that while starting like 6 games. So,
and he did about 50 of them without a
running back. But
yeah, the running backs.
Let's calm down on Heisman stuff.
Yeah, no more. I mean,
has a running back ever won the Heisman with 1,400 yards?
I don't know. I'm not well versed enough to know. It just does seem like such a quarterback's award these days.
And Wes, the number one thing we forget, and I forget it sometimes too, is we are talking about a game. We are talking about a game.
Oh, I know.
And
anything I've said to anyone on Twitter about this has been with a smile on my face.
Yeah,
I can't say the same for a lot of the Tennessee fans right now. They're going through it, man.
They want it. They want it bad.
They finish behind Alabama in the rankings. They can't even get their guy to an award that he won't win. I mean, what are they mad about? They're not winning.
I don't know, man. Josh Heupel is SEC Coach of the Year with the AP, so that's cool. He didn't want to find us for the Eddie Robinson Award. I thought Josh Heupel did a really good job this year.
Yeah, I thought so. If you lose 2 games, that's hard. It's hard to get over.
And not only that, man, they get to play in the South Carolina's My Daddy Bowl. They get to play in the, they get to play in in the I got Gamecocked Bowl. I mean, just, I mean, God, if you're South Carolina,
hey man, Georgia's had some of those seasons where they had a full head of steam, and then things kind of get rocky towards the end, and you're watching them in the Outback.
And you know why I can laugh at it, Wes, is because I dealt with those angry, insufferable Georgia fans who had the rug yanked out from under them, and I was a shoulder for them to cry on. And I deleted their post that they wanted me to delete whenever they cursed everybody they've ever known. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen Jersey Jerry, who works for Barstool Sports. You ever seen that?
Yes.
He's the one that did that Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't ask me for nothing.
Right.
Don't no dishes, no nothing.
Yep.
We had people that would go on rants like that on the message board. And within like 20 minutes of posting it, I wouldn't even see it yet. I'm post-game writing, right? And all of a sudden they're DMing you over and over and over again. You got 30 DMs like, please take it down. Please take it down. Please take it down. I really embarrassed myself. Please take it down.
Why can't they just delete it themselves?
It wasn't like that. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So they wanted me to take their thread down. So I can laugh about, that happening. But I mean, hey, listen, if you're South Carolina, don't you have to engineer something to go troll that bowl?
Oh, you have to. I saw Shane Beamer at he was at the SEC championship.
Yeah.
Doing his media appearances or whatever. I guess Saban used to do those, but he was working on his campaign pitch for getting Bama in the playoff.
So that he could talk to Fox and everybody else.
Insane, man. That's it's the game you have to play, but man, is it a tough look.
I'll tell you what, a lot of people harped on that whole Saban thing. They harped on, the whole Vegas idea that you'd be favored, and hey, what were you whenever you played Tennessee and LSU? I didn't harp on that as much as I harped on, well, I'll be danged, Alabama's the only team in the country to deal with injuries for a little part of the season. Can you believe it? They dealt with injuries when nobody else had to, and bless their hearts. I mean, he's the greatest, and it's the greatest dynasty we've seen to this point. I'm actually starting to think there might be an outside shot that Georgia can do a little bit to challenge it and put its own thing together here. Whenever I kind of doubted that before, I didn't think we'd ever see anything like it again.
I didn't think so. And there's still a lot to be seen with how college football looks. We don't know. We don't know what kind of reality we're entering with this expanded playoff and the realignment of the conferences. It's going to be an absolute circus, Jake. I mean, I foresee this future where it's almost like the Big Ten media coverage and the SEC media coverage are kind of like how CNN and Fox News are now, or MSNBC or whatever. You got Joel Klatt over here yelling at Paul Feinbaum. It's going to be
loving the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, and
it's going to be great, but it's also going to be so insufferable in so many ways.
I wonder if we look back on this, Wes, and this is year one and year two of portal and NIL. NIL is in a different gear now, so is the portal. Year one and year two of NIL in the portal. If Georgia can win back-to-back titles in year one and year two of NIL and the transfer portal, I wonder if we'll look back and think about that as just like this. If the game changes to the point over the next 10 to 20 years, if we look back and we say, God, what a monumental accomplishment. I mean, it's a monumental accomplishment anyway. I mean, in any era of college football to go back to back. But it's with anything. It'll be however people want to filter it. And it's either going to be Georgia really got something right, or Georgia just benefited and was lucky while everyone else didn't know how to play the game yet. And it could be either one of those things, and it won't matter because they'll still have the hardware. It's hard for me to call them lucky, though, whenever you win a title and arguably your most talented returning receiver walks out the door to go to another school. And you don't replace them. You don't bring anybody in. And you lose 15 guys to the NFL draft. You use 5 defenders to the first round of the NFL draft.
Right.
Come back out with the nation's number. I mean, I heard it today. I can't remember who brought it up. Georgia's had the number one scoring. If everything holds right now, Georgia number one scoring defense 3 out of the last 4 years. I think Dusty Dvorak and Danny Cannell were talking about it this morning.
Man,
so,
filthy.
I mean, and to do it with what they lost, I mean, I don't think you can. Well, I don't think you can honestly be honest with yourself and look. There's going to be Tennessee fans and South Carolina fans and Alabama fans to look back and say, "Yep, it was just they grabbed all the fish when all the water was muddy."
Right.
But
doesn't mean they're right.
Yeah, they're not. They won't be.
Really quick, I almost forgot. We got to chop some wood. I'll hop on mine really quick. Maurice Clarett. Has the guy not learned? Has anyone not learned? You don't have to be a college football historian, okay? Just go back a couple years. Don't give Georgia this stuff. Don't give it to them.
Listen, man, they're on Twitter, dude. Eric Ainge learned that. They're on Twitter.
They're on Twitter. It's not just that. They're everywhere, and not only do they see what you say, they turn it into something. I almost called them CBS 46. They're now Atlanta News First. They did a story with Davin Bellamy and Brian Harrion. Emily I don't know how to say
Gagnon,
her last name.
I think say Gagnon.
She's Canadian, so I assume it's a French pronunciation. But they talked about the Auburn game in 2017 where they got the rematch with Gus. And they said, yeah, man, we had Gus saying we whipped the dog crap out of him. We had it in the urinals. We had it all over the weight room. We had it all over the Butts-Mehre building. They had it everywhere. So it's like, why do you do it? And I know it's not Maurice's program to worry about. He's not a player or coach. But come on, dude, you're poking a bear.
Nothing gets missed anymore, man. You let it slip out there. I mean, even if you do that and you delete it in 30 seconds, somebody screenshotted it.
Georgia gonna get. Here's what if you're just listening.
Rolled on.
Clarett tweeted, Georgia gonna get rolled on. The young guys have something to prove. Staff has something to prove. The staff is looking for new jobs right now and taking new jobs. I mean, I don't know what they have to prove. They got what? They want to play Michigan again? Okay, that's fine. Georgia wants to play Michigan too.
So they do have that. So the one coach, the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator, took the Tulsa job. Is that right? The Wilson?
Yes, I believe so.
Coach Wilson, the one that was at Indiana. And Brian Hartline was looking at that Cincinnati job, but did not get it.
That would be a huge loss for them.
And on top of everything else, Wes, I know it. Like I'm a reporter. I don't need to say that. Let's say it like that. I strongly feel it in my gut that Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I guess Todd McShay said it tonight, it's just an opt-out.
Yeah,
it's just an opt-out. It's probably been an opt-out for a good little while now. And I'm telling you guys, more meaningful games may make them opt-out less. It's not going to make them not opt-out. Right. We haven't even gotten there yet, and we've already – and if I'm not mistaken, Wes, I think an Ohio State kid might have been the one – maybe it was a Michigan guy. Maybe it was Jake Butt was the first one to do it. But I remember Joey –
was it Peppers or Dalvin Cook? I thought it was around –
I thought it was that Peppers. Michigan tight end, but I do remember one of the Bosa brothers got hurt early in the season, and timetable had him coming back at the end of the year, like with a few games to play. And I could be wrong on that. So, but I'm pretty sure he had a chance to return, and he went ahead and said he was done and he was training for the draft.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of what Jackson Smith and Jig was doing here a little bit, even though he's been hurt on and off. But, I mean, that cat had 330-something yards in the Rose Bowl last year.
One game.
He's only had 5 catches for 40-something yards for him this year. But tell you what, not having to deal with him, may not have to deal with one of the really good running backs, kind of a break for Georgia for sure.
All right. What you chopping wood about?
All right, man. Chopping wood on, let me see how to put this. I want to chop wood, so we talk about the front seven on defense. Well, I want to talk about kind of the front seven on offense. And I was looking at something today, And there are a myriad of things that kind of got me. Jaheim Bell is a kid from Valdosta, South Carolina tight end, right? He played running back for him late in the year. Really good player. He actually torched Kamari Lassiter on a go route when Georgia played South Carolina earlier this year at 230-something pounds. Really impressive guy. There was a rumor out there that Georgia had reached out to Jaheim Bell. That is not the case. I think that may have something to do with somebody putting it out there, whether it's South Carolina or somebody else, to maybe loosen things up with Oscar Delp.
Okay.
With the lack of opportunities there. And that would make some sense since South Carolina's got some ties there through family, whatever. Well, the reason I say that is because Georgia's not going to go after Jaheim Bell. And they're not going to go after Jaheim Bell because he can't play tight end. All right, because he can play. He's a good football player. He's a heck of a football player. He's a receiver. He's a utility offensive player. He's Deebo Samuel, maybe not quite as fast. He's not a tight end. Georgia needs tight ends because what Georgia does and the way what Georgia demands of the guys who play that position and play outside and play offensive line is they're going to make you put your face on somebody and block them. And that's not what this guy's good at. And if he's not and doesn't want to develop that way, then Georgia's not going to recruit you because at the end of the day, Brock Bowers is as effective as he is as a receiver because he's a dominant blocker, and you have to play him honest, and you have to figure out ways to get it going. Georgia's offensive front seven this year, chopping wood on them because – the more I think about it, the more I think this is what really sets Georgia apart from anybody else. Not that Georgia's dominant or not that Georgia has the best offensive line in the history of the world, but because when so many people in college football have taken time out of the shoulder pads and have decided to kind of water down practice and maybe focus on movement over contact, Georgia hasn't. And that's why it is the way it is, where it is. That's why it is where it is right now. And it's because of that contact, because of that craving of it. And Michigan does it the same. I think these two teams might be on a collision course. But, man, how crazy would it be if Georgia got a chance to play TCU in the national championship?
Kirby's first bowl game, right?
Yeah, how strange. How strange would that be? And I don't know, man. Maybe we will get some weirdness in this playoffs. It's been kind of anticlimactic the last couple of years.
Well, Ohio State and Michigan might set up like a consolation bracket if they both get.
I hope they
bounced.
do. That'd be great. I'd love to watch it.
There seems to be some.
That's a long day,
business.
dude. The game of the national championship is a long day. That Monday is a long day, and that whatever day that's
West Coast too.
Sunday. I believe it's a Sunday. It's going to be a long Sunday too that we wait for, or Saturday for Georgia to play.
They put Georgia in the night game slot.
Yeah, I wanted to get home for New Year's and see my family for New Year's. Do the
Boo Radley.
Boo Radley Corrigan.
Boo Corrigan said, "No, you are going to be watching football with me, sir." There's some weirdness in the playoff, though. I mean. It's hard to really gain ground on a team twice. Everyone ran all over Oklahoma to varying degrees. Their game with Georgia was close, but Clemson and Bama went back and forth in a semifinal matchup, and in the Natty. I don't know if the playoff is old enough for there to be like a streak yet. I'll dig into that before our next show. Y'all check out DawgsHQ.com, $10 right now until September, right? Until the start of next football season, basically. You can access DawgsHQ's premium work and our message board and all the fun on that community that we have day in and day out. It's getting wild right now, as you can imagine, with the Stetson Heisman candidacy and Ohio State. No one's even talking about Ohio State right now because of Stetson. So that's pretty odd. But check it out. And of course, we'll have you covered as we run up to the Heisman Trophy presentation on Saturday. Palmer Toms will be in New York and covering that. Depending on what happens, I assume we'll be around. If Stetson is to win it, we'll have all kinds of crazy reaction there. It'll be weird. But like I said earlier, it's ultimately not too weird because no one is underestimating Stetson Bennett anymore if they've been paying attention.
Hey, if it's going to get weird, let's get weird, man.
Let's get weird. Let's keep
weird.
doing it. I'll wear a tux on the show if Stetson wins. Appreciate y'all sitting through this and engaging and being with us. Kenneth Kinney was our first comment at 8:01 p.m. We went live at 8:30, and he hasn't said anything since. He just said Buckeye Nation. So y'all check on Kenneth. I hope he's all right. His parents naming him Kenneth when his last name is Kinney is just cruel.
Ken.
Y'all hit subscribe on this channel if you enjoyed it. We'll be back again. Take care. And until next time, peace.